Hi, my name is Crystals, and I'm going to be presenting on building internal and external community and discussing the ways that my system has done that. And we're going to be talking about inner communication, developing friendships, and building community. And so a couple trigger warnings are going to be that we might talk a little bit about or allude to relational trauma, neglect, and isolation. And also I just want to preface it with that this topic of connections and community, when you haven't had it, or if you're just now starting to form those relationships, that can be hard. It can bring up a lot of stuff. And so I'll give a little image description, which is I'm a light-skinned, female-bodied with light brown hair, blue eyes. And in my background, I have several things in my background. I have some, and they kind of relate to my topic too. So I have some flowers. These were given to me by someone that I worked with during a transition. I have a box of Kleenex, and this is just, I like to keep a box of Kleenex because I know that these emotions, not these emotions, but these topics sometimes can bring up emotions, and just to let you know that however you're feeling is welcome, that you don't have to like anything I say, and you're free to have whatever responses come up for you. And then I have this painting that I did. It's inside of a frame that a friend made for me. I ended up having some conflict with that friend, and it was kind of a difficult situation, but I still care about her. She was still valuable to me. And sometimes there's difficulties, and that's one of the, I guess, parts of this topic. But inside of it, it says, "I love you all." And that's a painting that is watercolor that I made for the people in my system and in my collective. And then this here is something that was made for me by a friend of mine that I'm still friends with her. She gave it to me. They gave it to me. And then I have a rock here that is a decorative rock that says "relax," that has a little bird on it, a little butterfly on it. And that is just something that a provider was late. And when she came the next time, she gave me that. And just to honor that my time was valuable, that I'm valuable. And it really meant a lot that she actually gave it to me. Another time, a provider ended 5 minutes early with me, and then she made that 5 minutes up. And those little things for me and for my system like really make a big difference. And up here, I have, this is a little bit on my topic too, I have charms that represent each of my inside people, that all of us have our own charms. And it's kind of a way that helps us communicate with each other and remember each other and check in with each other, and just a way of expression too. So each person can kind of be like, "Hey, I really like to ride bikes. I want to have a bike for my charm," or whatever it is that they're interested in. So my pronouns are she, her, or we, or I, depending on how I'm referring to myself. And that's what that is. So just, yeah, I'm a little nervous about this topic because I just know I don't want to come across as like I have it all figured out, or I'm telling people what to do. I still struggle with forming attachments and forming relationships, and sometimes have difficulties internally. Sometimes we have conflict with each other, or we stop talking to each other. Sometimes some of us might still think that the other ones aren't real or don't exist. And so we are still growing and still learning. And we hope that something about our experience can help inspire people and help people find maybe just the next step in this process, or that can give some hope or some ideas on how to build internal community and external community. And just that it's a lot of work and it's really hard. And wherever you're at, I just want to extend acceptance and welcoming for whatever you're bringing. And so I grew up very isolated. I was homeschooled. I didn't live near extended family, and I had some really just difficult situations, which is part of I think, which is part of why I have an internal community, because and internal people, because I didn't have what I needed externally. And I had a lot of chores when I was a kid, and a lot of I didn't really watch TV much. I read a lot, and we also talked to each other and created stories and had ways of communicating that I think that the whoever is fronting and the people fronting aren't always aware of, that we created ways that we had an internal community and had some supports that we wouldn't have otherwise had, that we weren't able to get those needs met in the external world. And that was a really hard situation, and I didn't learn a lot of the skills that people learn, social skills that people learn when they go to school or when they are out with a bunch of cousins or in certain situations. I did have a sister, so that helped some, I think, when you have external siblings. And so I found some supports internally, and also for my spirituality was actually also a source of support. So when I was very shut down, and eventually went into therapy for the first time when I was 19, and I could hardly talk at all. Like I just couldn't connect, but I desperately wanted that connection with the therapist, and the therapist was very patient and really held space for us. I didn't know I was plural then, and through a lot of time of just her just sitting there and being a supportive presence. After I got out of college, I eventually started drinking, and then drinking kind of became my substance use. I guess is another trigger for this that I forgot to mention. I didn't realize I was going to be talking about that like that. But substance use became kind of a friend to me. And I remember really looking forward to it and feeling like I didn't have to feel so alone, because I had that. And that I was in therapy, but they didn't know what was going on and couldn't identify it. And I kept dissociating. I couldn't talk. And so I was really, really lonely and really had a lot going on. But I got to where I could eventually start calling crisis lines, and was able to connect a little bit with an external person in that way. I had some therapists where we worked on some attachment stuff, but it was still really, really difficult. And then I eventually got into a recovery community. And in the recovery community, what that was helpful in that I wanted what they had. And it was kind of the first time where I felt accepted, that there was somebody who, and so I started talking a little bit more, but not in front of people. I would only talk in front of people if somebody called on my name off of a list. And And then I got a service commitment there. I was a coffee maker, and that gave me a reason to talk to people, because people would ask me, like, where's the sugar or where's the whatever. So being of service, it was all really hard. But I just kept going and kept just reaching out. The people who were supporting me, they told me call 3 people a day. And I was in an area and got some successes from those calls. They were really, really hard. The phone was just super hard, being really, really scared to call somebody. So people would say, well, call somebody when you're doing good. Don't call somebody when you're having a hard time. So I call somebody and be like, I'm just calling, and they'd say, ask them how they are, see how they are. And so I'd say, how are you doing? And then a lot of people like to talk about themselves. And so they would talk about themselves. And then I kind of started to learn some skills about how to do that. Now I'm super friendly and you can't shut me up, and I'm sharing at the conference, even though I'm nervous here. And I will speak out in meetings, and different people in my system who are more advocates will say things that nobody else will have the courage to say. And so it's a much different situation now. But it didn't start out that way. It started out with just finding small things. Once somebody said, introduce yourself to 3 people that you haven't met at these meetings. And so I went up and I introduced myself. But then the person, I had already met them, and they were shocked that I didn't remember. And we'd had whole conversations. And so then that was really scary. I was like, I had, I guess, lost some time and didn't remember meeting them. And so I stopped doing that. I was like, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. I don't want to risk this embarrassing myself in this way. And so I found other ways to introduce myself and to talk to people. And then, so eventually I was able to find a therapist who diagnosed me with a dissociative disorder, and I started to get to know the people who are inside of my system. And that started slowly. That started with, first I found an online forum, and one of my teens ended up coming out and talking to another teen, and he spent all day talking to that other teen and connecting. And that was how I started to get to know him and started to realize, wow, this is real. Like, I'm not just making this up. There's actually other people here. And eventually, I started meeting the other people, recognizing when it was them versus when it was me. We blend a lot, is how my system is set up. And so how people's systems are set up is going to vastly depend on vary, versus when you're building internal community, is how you do that. It's not going to be the same for everybody. It's going to be different for everybody depending on your individual situation and what you are. A lot of people don't have ways of communicating with each other. We can talk to each other a little bit more than some people can. So I think that's, but like I said, we're still learning. So getting into the, but even before we recognized each other, we started going to a wellness center, and at the wellness center there were interns and there were some other people. And when we first started going there, we had so much going on that we could kind of only just talk to the interns. Like, we couldn't really even talk to the other people at the center. Part of that, I think, was probably because we thought we were better than them. Some of us did, like we thought, like we just had some judgments that we needed to work through, and some acceptance around where we were at, a lot of internalized ableism, externalized ableism that we had to work through. And then eventually there were a couple of people there that we started connecting with, and eventually we started facilitating some groups there, or doing the check-in, or doing the community meeting, or doing chores. I think even though I did a lot of chores when I was a kid, and that was not a good situation, I have found meaning and ways of connecting through finding small ways to be of service, or small things to do, of reaching out. I remember we would have the birthday night when we celebrate like links of clean time or sobriety time. And I would never want to be, I don't think I ever volunteered to be the birthday person who congratulated everybody, because I knew that generally people hugged people, and I wasn't comfortable with that. And so, but eventually I became the greeter, which was really, really hard, because I had to stand at the door and say hi to people when they walked in, and that was outside of my comfort zone. But I got to a place where I was able to do it. And with some of these things, I think recognizing whether something is hard and scary because you haven't done it before and you have ideas of what might happen, versus if you have a trauma history around it, where it's actually like something bad happened in your past that makes it hard. Because if it's a trauma thing, then you need to be really gentle with yourself in a different way, and not just force yourself into situations. Find ways that feel okay, and ways to kind of heal or process some of those wounds, which I know is probably not easy, and it can take like a really long time. And so I just want to put that out there. But if it's not, and you don't always know, like you don't always know if it's from trauma, or if it's just something that you're scared of because you don't have the skills and need to build the skills around it. I was also in some, and I know this is kind of controversial, but dialectical behavioral therapy, where we worked on, one of the modules was interpersonal effectiveness, and there were some exercises in there, and I worked with my therapist a lot around doing role plays, around setting boundaries and advocating, and but I still, unless I didn't connect with people, I had a really hard time forming attachments, or missing people. Like I didn't miss people because I didn't get close enough to do that. But I started to do that with the therapist. And also, I just want to say that I really know I found some help through therapy, but I also know that that's not always accessible, and that it can be really hard to find somebody. And so if you're in that situation and it just seems like there's nobody, like, I just want to send some caring to that. And yeah, I know that I have some privilege around that, around having had access to a therapist where I was able to build that connection. And I know a lot of people don't have that. And also to having found some recovery communities. And so it can be a hard situation if and I don't want to, I feel like I am kind of giving advice of like, these are the things I did that worked for me, but also knowing that these are just ideas, and they may or may not be what is right for you and for your system. And so just taking everything with kind of like a grain of salt. And I think that's a little bit why I have like the relax thing, like that could even feel like not good to read that. So that's kind of why I'm like trying to cover it with my head a little bit. Just because it can be so hard. Like, these things can just be so hard. And so I was really, I made some friends at the wellness center. I could go to groups. I could start to talk in small ways, start to connect in small ways, and start to find things I enjoy, or find inner communication between ourselves. And but I was still very isolated. And so what I started doing, holidays came, and I was like, I am not invited anywhere. And so I started inviting people. I would invite like all of my Facebook friends and everybody I knew over for Thanksgiving. And like a couple of people would come, and just trying not to get hurt around like that people didn't come. But it was interesting because it would be people I wouldn't expect. Like, and still like, I will invite people out, and thinking about like how I would just invite everybody, because I was like, I don't know who wants to come and who doesn't, and who cares, and maybe who needs to, like, who doesn't have a place to go, who else is suffering the way I'm suffering, and how can I help that person. And I would be surprised at who came. And then it started being that people would look forward to and be like, hey, are you doing Thanksgiving at your house? And it kind of became a little bit of a thing, but it was so much work, and I didn't have a lot of money, so having to get really creative and really resourceful around that. And so I got to where I had a lot of friends. I thought I had a lot of friends, and then 2020 came and shelter in place hit, and I looked around and there was nobody. I didn't have one person who was part of my what they called social bubble, who you could hang out with. And I lived alone, and I had my dog, and I had just given my first dog away, who was my first attachment. Her name was Susan. She was a border collie, and she was a huge reason to connect me to other people. She was super friendly. She got me talking to people, and it was a safe conversation because it was about my dog, which wasn't too threatening in other ways. And so I had just given her away because I needed to retire her. She was a service dog, and I had a younger dog. And anyway, that was a whole situation. But the younger dog, the new dog, he helped connect me to myself. My kids would come out and talk to him, and I would hear them and notice them talking to him. And then that would help me talk to them and connect with them in a different way. That the older dog, I always say that the older dog, the border collie, she connected me externally to my community and to the people around me. But the younger dog, he connected to me, to myself and myself, and to each other in a way that the older dog didn't. And so I had just given her away. And so I just had this younger dog, and I was very isolated, and where I live, everything really shut down. And I realized that I didn't have any friends. I had a lot of friends, but I didn't have any real connections. And that was devastating. That was one of the hardest years. And so I thought about it, and thought through my friends, and I chose two. And before, I would kind of call different people, but I didn't have any attachment. I didn't have conflicts with people because I was so attuned to like what was going on and keeping the peace or whatever. And so I chose two friends and said, okay, I'm just going to invest in these two friendships. So I started calling them. And instead of calling just random people off of a phone list, which is what I was doing before, I started specifically calling those people. And those people ended up being really good friends. And they ended up being supportive of some of my views that other people haven't been, and some of my choices in the ways that other people haven't been. And also some ways that I have had to start resolving conflict with them. And I never had to do that before because I didn't have enough of an attachment to where there was conflict, or if there was conflict, I didn't stay and work through it. So that was a huge shift, and was really hard and really scary, and but it has somehow worked out. And now I don't just have those two friends. I have another friend that ended up showing up for me. And then in 2021, I quit my job. It just wasn't feeling in alignment anymore. And I was wanting to do more around working with educating therapists and also creating more supports for people with multiplicity, because I see that is a huge need. And so anytime I tried to do stuff with that, they wanted me to work a little bit broader. So I quit my job and I started a ministry. And one of the things I needed to do was pick a co-trustee. And for whatever reason, those two friends were not I didn't think they were the right person at the time. And I just had this moment of like, I have no one, and just feeling isolated and alone. And I was like, I was going to pick my mom. But there was huge internal conflict. Like, no, that's not the right person. And I ended up thinking about somebody. I ended up asking them. And then I later asked one of the two friends that I had, and they have really stepped up and been supportive in ways that I didn't know that people would be. And I have since also, with my work and also just being part of the Plural Positivity Conference, first time connecting with other people who are plural, just like that hunger of, oh my gosh, there's somebody who gets it, somebody who understands what it's like to be multiple. And so I started a group. At first I started it in person, and then shelter in place came. And so then I moved it online. That group is still going 3 years later. And then that group formed another group. And then I met some people at a different plural conference. And then we've now been meeting for 2 years. And then that group, so something happened, and then there formed another group. And so now I'm part of that group. And now I have groups every day with other people who are plural, other people I relate to. And then I found some in-person people, and things have just grown in ways that I would have never really thought were possible. I still can get really lonely. I still don't always form those attachments. I'm not in a dating relationship. And some of those things I still need more healing around before I'm ready for that, or just haven't had that. And so some of the things that helped a lot of this have been talking more about the external community. But I do think that it kind of goes back also to do with the internal community. And that's something that I probably need to do some more work on. I have started intentionally trying to do certain things, and also like I struggle with it. I just want to, be honest. Like we'll say, oh, we're going to make time for the kids, and then something will happen and we won't. And so we said, okay, well, we don't want to be breaking our promises. We don't want to break promises to anybody, but I mean, especially not to the younger ones of us, because that was just not something that was what we wanted. And so we kind of stopped doing that. But then also we stopped spending as much time with them. And so and we go in and out with that. And then sometimes everybody will be talking at the same time and we can hear them, but we can't like make out what anybody's saying. And we did some work around that. We have journals, that different people have journals, and we've found different ways to people to communicate what they like, or somebody to be like, hey, I really want this shirt, and it's a men's shirt, and I'm a guy, and yeah, this system identifies as female, but I'm a guy, and so we got him that shirt. And I mean, that's not going to fix everything. Buying a shirt isn't going to fix everything, or just like buying the kids a stuffed animal isn't going to fix everything, but it has gone some way in building trust and building connection. We have everybody's name on a flashcard, and so when we make a major decision, we ask everybody about it, and people can say, yes, we want to do that, no, I don't want to do that, or I don't care. And then we don't just go with the ones that it's the majority. We also have to like try to tune in with the other people who had a different view. And I think that has really changed how we do things. Like now we don't just say yes or no. We say, okay, I'm going to think about it. I'm going to hear what the other people say. And so that has been really an amazing journey of discovery, and it's been hard, and now we're even getting to where we're starting to open up a little bit more with friends. Like yesterday was probably one of the first times where we, like most people know that we're plural, because with our work, we started Multifaceted Journeys, and we do a lot of groups there for people who are plural, and for just people who want to live more authentic, self-directed lives, just helping people find their purpose, helping people live more fully in creativity. And so also providing education to therapists and groups for therapists, and using our lived experience. And so we do a lot around using our own lived experience. I forgot where I was going with that, but so with that, so and also we added the S to the end of our name. So it's crystals, it's plural, and we meet people and they say, oh, it's plural. And then we decide whether or not it feels safe to come out. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but eventually we usually end up coming out because it's such a big part of our life and our work now. But even with all of that, we still get into denial, or into conflict, or into things, or where we've told our friends, but our friends don't really know, and we don't talk. We still act like we're one person. But the other night, yesterday, one of our friends said, how did this meeting go? And whoever was running was doing the the transcript for the subtitles and was not the person who went to the meeting. And that was the first time that one of us had said, no, I don't know. I wasn't the one that was there. When before we just would either switch to the person who was there and give the person the answer, or we would find the answer inside. But that was just feeling like too much work. And it was really amazing that we have gotten to a place where we have a friend who we could be honest like that and be like, no, I wasn't the one that was there. And so when they're back, they can tell you. And to not have to pretend to be one person. And also to kind of like, there was probably some kind of inner process there too of an agreement or negotiation. We also have agreements, system-wide agreements that we have with each other. And sometimes then we need to adjust them because sometimes people aren't keeping them. And so we have to look at them and see, is this working for you or not? And how are we going to help everybody get their needs met? And that's really hard. We have had things around holidays, or if there's a special day where we make time and do something together with the people in our system, or we have given each other gifts or done different things to try to build community and build that. We also live alone, which I think helps in some ways. But also we can get really involved in work and advocacy and all this kind of stuff and forget to check in with each other. We still have people who are afraid of downtime or afraid of connecting with people who hold trauma. And that's something where we're still growing and where we're still learning and still working on our collective and how are we going to work together? How are we going to have a life that's meaningful for everybody and not just for the people who are friends with our friends, or not just for the people that work, or not just for the kids. How are we going to take care of ourselves? Our dog helps a lot. He pokes us if we're hungry or if we're not taking care of ourselves or if we're getting too stressed. And then also he's somebody that the kids can talk to. And so just in closing, I just want to encourage anybody who's watching this just to be gentle with yourself, be gentle with your process. I think that it's possible to build community, whether that be external or internal, or to heal to the next level. You may not get to where you want to be, but a lot of times when we look back, we can see that we're not where we used to be, and that's really important to recognize the progress. And also sometimes we just need to grieve how hard it is and how the reality of that we don't have our needs met and that we don't have the community that we need either internally or externally. And sometimes in that process of grieving that and of feeling those feelings, we can kind of move through that and something might open up or something might shift. And I just am glad that everybody's here and encourage people to do whatever the next thing is that feels okay to do, whether it be saying, hi, this is my name in the chat and this is who we are, or commenting on somebody else's thing in the chat, or sending a message, or somebody says smashing the computer because you feel alone. Whatever it is that you are doing is just be gentle with yourself and your system and where you're at. And I hope that you have heard something that has maybe been helpful. And if not, I'm glad you're here and encourage just wherever to be with that too. So thank you for being here. And that is the end of my share.